college football than I do NFL football, or really anything else for that matter. The Big Ten and the Pac-12 canceled their fall sports. They canceled football this year, or at least postponed it. It's probably going to be canceled. Let's be honest. We were supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks, and we're 170 days in now, and we're still canceling stuff. What do we do? Where do we go from here? So, for those of you who don't know, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, they both came out. The Pac-12 was really not a surprise to anybody. After a lot of the smaller conferences had kind of come out, the Mountain West, the MAC, they'd come out and said, no college football for us this year. A lot of FBS schools also. No college football for us this year. We're going to cancel the season, postpone the season. And some people were like, wow, why would they do that? Others, I mean, it made sense. You know, at that point, it was set up that all conferences would just play each other, or all conference would play interconference schedules. Well, at that point, if a MAC team goes undefeated, it doesn't matter because they're not going to end up taking out an SEC, a Big 12, a Big 10, an ACC, or Pac-12 team. It's just not. Sorry, UCF, guess what? The AAC is not enough for you to actually make a title game. But the Big Ten and the Pac-12, this time, after more deliberation, after it looked like they weren't going to play, then it looked like they were going to play, now they have come out and said, we are not going to play. The Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC, however, apparently they're still playing. They just said, no, we're going to keep playing. I mean, shocker, the teams from the South and Texas and Oklahoma are saying, no, we're going to keep playing football. We were going to do the same thing we were going to anyway. The ACC might be in a little bit of trouble because they had we'll play 10 or 11 games in conference, and then we'd have one non-conference game, but it'll be an in-state game. Well, that's all well and good, but unless you plan on playing maybe a local pickup game, I don't know if any other teams are going to be left to play. So all those teams kind of revised plans, but they said, no, we're going to go forward, we're going to play. I don't think that's going to last too much longer. As of today, president, Mark Emmert of the NCAA came out and said, no fall championships. It's just not happening. They won't have a title game in the fall for fall sports. There's a possibility it gets postponed in the spring. I don't know. I don't know if that even works, especially for football, because you do have top talented guys that are going to be looking to get drafted. Maybe not. If you do have a fall game, it's got to end directly before April 25th, 24th, usually is when the draft falls. Your playoff games better end right there, because you get kids get drafted in the first round, they're not going to play one more game in college and risk losing all this money that they can make if they got drafted in the first round. You already have players, leaving. Micah Parsons, I miss you. You already have players leaving already. You're going to have more if you can't get that season and that championship game settled beforehand. Hopefully they figure it out. When looking at that, though, I did have a question. So, obviously the idea is, the thought process is that's terrible. We lost college sports. It's definitely going to hurt teams, but does it help some teams as well? Are there some teams that maybe are really young and maybe are really young and they have a lot of talent, but you know what? We weren't there. We needed to develop. Maybe coach was on the hot seat with a young team, but hey, now we got this really good team. We could be dominant with another year under our belt. Or will it not matter because they're not playing any games anyway? They're just getting bigger and stronger. I think without a doubt, two teams I can think of that just get absolutely crushed by this. One is Penn State. Penn State was everybody's dark horse coming into the season. Everybody looked at them and said, nope, that is a team. The Big Ten isn't down, but there's nobody that's really competing with Ohio State. And then people saw Penn State, a game in Happy Valley at night. It was going to be the whiteout, obviously. Anything can happen in the whiteout. I was at the game, the blocked field goal, where Penn State beat number 2 Ohio State in the whiteout. there was a feeling around Penn State and around college football that this was the year that Penn State would slay Ohio State and they would move in and take the one spot and probably beat Wisconsin because it's always Wisconsin in the Big Ten West and go on and get to the championship. And even if they didn't, there was also a strong possibility Penn State went 11-1, and if your only loss is Ohio State, guess what? Welcome to the college football playoff. You're going to go. It's a big name school. It's big name money. They were going to go. I think another team that really gets crushed by this is Florida. I think Florida is another one. Dan Mullen's also building something down there, but that's a team that they're hurt by this. They were similar to the Penn State position where they did really well last year. They were kind of younger, but not really. They were juniors and sophomores, and they were developing. And you watched as now these players are all going to be leaving. You're going to have to replace them with younger guys. Perfect example. Florida is now going to lose Kyle Trask, who is what he is. He's not an NFL caliber quarterback, in my opinion. Maybe like a 5th round pick, maybe. But he had heart. He had heart and soul of that team, something Felipe Franks couldn't give them. But now you're looking at it and going, these two dark horse candidates that aren't really dark horses because everybody was picking them to be the dark horse candidate, they're getting crushed by this because, you now are going to lose these extremely talented players that were, one more year. Whereas instead of, these teams that just, they're a factory where they have 5-star recruits all the time. Not saying Florida and Penn State don't recruit well. They obviously do. They're always up at the top of recruiting. But how often are they going to be able to say, for instance, with Penn State, you have a generational talent in Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons is going to be considered one of the best Penn State linebackers of all time. He's going to be, it's amazing that a guy can wear number 11 after LeVar Arrington wore number 11 at Penn State, and all of a sudden you have another guy come in, wear 11, and dominate just as much as LeVar Arrington did. Michael Parsons already declared for the draft anyway. He said, nope, not playing this year, not risking it. So it's one of those things, it truly does hurt teams like Penn State and Florida. However, could this have helped a few teams? I think if you look at that and say, well, how could this help a few teams? Nobody's playing. If we go forth under the assumption that literally nobody's playing, okay? Nobody's playing. I don't think you're going to see, even if they do play, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of coaches get fired. If we go into the assumption that no one's playing and we're just basically taking a year off, maybe 6 months off, but we'll just say a year off just for argument's sake. I think there are two teams that it absolutely helps. One of them is Will Muschamp in South Carolina. Mainly it helps Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp barely kept his job last year. He's got a young, talented team. He's got a young, really good quarterback in Helinski. But they needed a little bit more developing. They had a brutal schedule this year. It was almost the writing on the wall that Will Muschamp was getting fired at the end of this year, which rightfully so. I don't think Will Muschamp has ever proven in his time at Florida or South Carolina that he's worthy of being a head coach in the SEC, especially not at a team like South Carolina, which is good, not great, needs a lot more to ever compete for an SEC title. The other team is Kansas, they have a football team. Yeah, believe it or not, Kansas has a football team. They finally went out of their way. They spent money. They went and got Les Miles. They got the Mad Hatter. Last year, Kansas was as inconsistent can be. One day they'd score 13 points, and the next day they'd score 48. Thanks for that, by the way. I lost that bet when Kansas decided to score 48 points. I think this helps Kansas. I think a team that Les Miles is trying to build a program at Kansas. I mean, that is a terrible, terrible program at Kansas who just could not get any talent. And now you look at it and go, okay, well, they couldn't really get any talent, but, now that Will Muschamp's here, or Jesus, now that Les Miles is here, we can start to recruit a little bit. I don't think they would have really done much more this year. He got hired late, so he didn't really blow it away with his first recruiting class. His recruiting class that was supposed to come in this year was pretty good. It wasn't excellent, but it was better than it had been in the past. He's trying to build that defense first mentality, something that somebody like Matt Campbell at Iowa State did and was able to build something in the Big 12. Maybe not a Big 12 contender, but something that you can compete, maybe win 8 games. Well, it would have taken another year. Okay, now I'll recruit one more year. Cool. Now these freshmen become sophomores, and again, if they don't play, granted they don't have game form, but all that tells me is they're at these top rate facilities just getting bigger, stronger, faster, learning the playbook. I'm sure they're running through 1,000 simulations. And one team I did forget, I actually just thought of, I can't believe I forgot to put it in my notes here, was that it definitely hurts. Poor Oklahoma State. The forever little brother of Oklahoma, who is basically just the punching bag of the college football playoff, the team that probably, honestly, they could go undefeated now, and I don't think the college football playoff would let them in because you're going to get destroyed again. Your defense sucks. Poor Oklahoma State. They were just a team that had so much talent. Now, some said they weren't even a dark horse. A lot of people had them winning the Big 12. The Oklahoma's coming in with with 2 unproven quarterbacks now. Great prospects, but unproven quarterbacks. Granted, Lincoln Riley's a great coach. Apparently, just everybody that plays quarterback at Oklahoma just wins the Heisman now. But great quarterbacks great prospects who have never started yet. Oklahoma State basically returned everyone. I mean, who gives a shit about their defense? I don't think Oklahoma State cares about their defense, or anybody in the Big 12 not named TCU, Baylor, or Iowa State care about their defense. But Oklahoma State's offense was just insane. Between Chuba Hubbard coming back, Sanders coming back, and quarterback, there was a lot of kind of younger mental mistakes that you could see. Oh, okay, they're gonna fix that. They're gonna correct that when they're done or when they're older. You had a feeling that this was the year they were going to do it. Now, for anybody who watches Oklahoma State as much as I do, I'm a big fan of betting on the Big 12 over because, let's be honest, it's the Big 12 and it's the over. Just like Scott Van Pelt says, if you bet the under in a Big 12 game, the hell is wrong with you? That's just not going to happen. I love watching Oklahoma State play football, but there is at least 2-3 games a year where Oklahoma State plays where you're just stuck going, what are you doing? Like, are you okay? They go to Bedlam against Oklahoma, and every time they just implode. I think Oklahoma State is out there just to play no defense, and Oklahoma's like, oh, maybe we'll get like 2 stops, and they win. But it is true, and they always have a trip up game against like Texas Tech or TCU, and you're just looking at them and going, you're a lot more talented than they are. You should probably not lose that game. So I think Oklahoma State definitely gets hurt by that as well.